Welcome to In the Garden. Good morning. I'm Melissa Siegel, your moderator and a Montgomery County Master Gardener. And our experts today are Steve Dubick, the Montgomery County Master Gardeners Coordinator for the University of Maryland Extension Department, and Dave Ottalini, a co-lead with Susan Kirby and George Burt of the Montgomery County Master Gardener Demo Garden at the Montgomery Parks Agriculture History Farm in Derwood, Maryland. Some of the services we provide include our speakers group, who speak all over the county about different gardening topics. They talk to garden clubs, they talk in libraries, they talk at a couple of all kinds of places. And another program that we do that I really enjoy is our demonstration gardens. We have 4 or 5 of them around the county, one for children, and our youth gardening programs, which are really special. One in particular at the White Oak Community Center, we built a garden and we teach the children there how to grow vegetables and where their food comes from. Therapeutic horticulture, which is my favorite, and that's what I like to do. We go into care homes and we help the residents do gardening type projects because they can't get outside and they haven't touched soil in a long time. So we bring that all to them. Special events and Ask a Master Gardener, to name a few. So today our presenter is Dave Ottalini, and he's going to be talking about the Montgomery County Master Gardener Demo Garden. And Dave, what do you have for us today?
Well, thank you, Melissa, and everybody. Steve, good to talk to you. Good to see everybody. This garden is really special. It's really grown over the years since actually, I think we can blame Steve for being one of the original initiators of this demo garden up here. It's part of the Montgomery County Parks. The Agricultural History Farm Park is here, and we are allowed to use a part of it. And we are just so grateful that we can have such a pretty big space to grow a number of different gardens here and really show our educational purpose here. We really try to show our visitors all different kinds of ways that they can grow everything from pollinator gardens to vegetables, and do it in a way that is appropriate for their home or their circumstances. We're standing right now in the far back of the garden, and this is called the Butterfly Garden. And as you can imagine, the reason that we have...
Okay. Well, I think their technology is having a little issue. Maybe I'll continue on, and then when he comes back, we can hear him. So if you have any gardening questions or questions regarding any of the programs we've mentioned and have on our website, which the link should be posted shortly, please include your email in case we need to follow up, and also send us some pictures because they really help us make a diagnosis if that's what we need to do, and it's wonderful. You can also view previously answered questions from In the Garden on YouTube. Since our last program, we've received the following questions, and I think, Steve, I'll take this first one. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. All right. So what is causing this unsightly webbing on my trees and shrubs? Will it harm the plants? How can I get rid of them? So this is something I experienced when I first moved here 20 years ago. I moved into a house that had a black gum tree, and a whole branch was filled with this webbing. And I was really upset about it, so I cut it out, the whole branch, and that probably wasn't the right thing to do. Let's see, they're called fall webworms. They're caterpillars. They feed on more than 100 species of deciduous forest and shade trees. They like certain trees better than others, but they really like my black gum. But you can see them when you're driving down the street right now. They're already gone from their little nest that they created, but they do a lot of damage in terms of eating beneficial insects, and we want to try to keep them in check. Some of the things that you can do for these worm or fall webworms is prior to or right as you're seeing them forming, you need to use neem oil, and it will keep their population down, and they won't be able to get to the beneficial insects. Let's see. Caterpillars produce a web of fine silk, what many caterpillars do. And another way to get rid of them being unsightly is once their damage is done, you can cut off the edges of the branches. But if you do like I did, it will change the way the tree looks forever. And that's what happened to me. So I was really disappointed in the way it came out in the following fall. There are 2 generations. First generation is May, and the second generation is happening right now, or ending anyway right now. And the dry webs hang on terminals into the winter. So they lose their leaves, it snows, and they come back the next year. So it's really not a problem, not much to do about it. Okay, so we'll now go to the next question.
Okay. I think that's one for Dave. He's trying to log back in, Melissa. I'm just going to mention Dave's up there at the Derwood demo garden, and it's apparently the heat is affecting the equipment a little bit. So he's trying to reboot. Join us here real quick. So if you ever get a chance to join or see the Derwood demo garden, it's located at 18410 Montcaster Road in Derwood, Maryland, and it's open. It's on park property, so it's pretty much open all the time. And they have multiple little gardens in there where Dave is. And there's a butterfly garden. There's a children's garden. There's a vegetable garden. There's a pawpaw patch. There's a shade garden. There's medicinal plants. There's herbs. I think Dave is just about ready. So can't quite hear Dave, but he's waving his hand.
Another thing I really about the demo garden is we've got a lot of milkweed, and every year we've got lots of monarch butterflies on there. This year, not as many as we've had in the past, but it's a great way to see the whole process, the eggs, the caterpillars, the chrysalises, and they're pretty much done, I think, now. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, although there'll still be some activity, surprisingly, for the monarchs, even for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I still have a very large one, Melissa, out in front of the greenhouse. So they're still around. And I saw some monarch activity both at the Montgomery College and at Derwood a little bit. Not
Steve,
as many.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Dave.
Okay, great.
Okay. Are you ready to take some questions?
I'm ready. I apologize. We had a technical issue with the heat, believe it or not. So we've switched from the iPad to the iPhone, and I hopefully we'll move a little bit and keep the air flowing. We were just in the butterfly garden, if you'll remember, just a minute ago. Let me show you another one of my. This is one of my favorite places. This is called the Children's Garden, and the Children's Garden is a great tool for education because we grow a Three Sisters garden, we call it, which is the corn, Indian Native American corn, and then we grow beans, and then we grow squash. And the beans go up the stalks of the corn. And this is how Native Americans would grow their food long ago. Maybe even today in some areas, they probably still do it. Another section of the demo garden is we have a number of plants that are named for animals. And we have a teepee and a tunnel that the kids can go through. We'll turn around over here. Another one of our sections of the demo garden is our kitchen garden, and Ron can show all of this. Once again, this is a raised bed, so we want to show people how they can grow really a lot of different things in a very small area. You can grow herbs in pots, you can grow them in bags, you can grow them in the ground. The raised bed is great because it kind of provides some differentiation there. You can even put a liner in the bag if you have problems at home with trees and things that have roots. At my house, everything is grown in bags or in tabletop gardens because the roots from a big maple tree in my backyard gets into everything. This section of the garden here is our autistic garden. Before the pandemic, the ladies who worked here would host a group of children from the county, and they would come and they would learn how to plant plants and then how to take care of them. And then later they would come and they would be able to harvest the tomatoes and the beans and everything else that they had here. This year they decided to go ahead because they can't host those kids right now because of the pandemic. This area, and we'll get a little bit much shade here, maybe that'll help a little bit. This area here is called the fragrance garden, the urban fragrance garden. And again, this is something that you can grow at home. It's very simple to do with a lot of different herbs, lavender, rosemary, just about anything sage, different kinds of sages that you can think of. And very aromatic and wonderful. You can use them, just put the leaves off and using them in your cooking, or you can dry them and then save for winter time. But folks here are very, very hard to try to provide you an idea of some of the different kinds of plants that you can grow. And there are different kinds of basils that we have here. And some are very hardy. I know we're going to have a question about basil a little bit later on. But you can get very hardy plants, and will be well, most of the basils are annuals, but we'll have special projects. And
oh, there you go. Okay. Well, we'll keep going on. Let's see. Steve, can you talk about the Crepe Myrtle? 4 years ago, the question is, I planted a multi-trunk Crepe Myrtle natchez that is now about 12 to 15 feet tall. It turns out that 2 of the trunks have purple flowers. One subsequently died, perhaps a muskogee. And the problem is the purple flowering tree is more upright, and the 3 natchez have a more of a weeping habit. So once the trees get flowers, one trunk is taller than the rest of the tree, making the crown look misshapen, especially viewed from my second-story deck. I don't mind the 2 different colors, but I'm not thrilled about the different structure. I'm wondering if as the tree ages, the differences will become minimized. I've thought of pruning out the purple tree, but I worry that I will never have I'll always have an ending battle with sprouts, or could harm the remaining trunks. Should it get better with time, or is there another better course of action?
Yeah. So, I was looking at the picture of the Crepe Myrtle. It's kind of interesting. It looks like one shoot is different than the other. So what may have, I think what may have happened is that sometimes when they propagate these Crepe Myrtles, what they'll do is they'll take 3 cuttings and they'll put 3 cuttings together to get you a multi-trunked plant more quickly rather than taking a plant and pinching it. So it may have been a quality control issue that you essentially got a contaminant in there. So probably the thing to do rather, I think, is to cut it out. You cut the white one out and go with the 2, and at least an even number, and odd numbers are usually better when you get to multi-trunk things. It looks a little more natural, 3s, 5s, 7s, and such. So, but you're going to continually have this battle. So I think cutting out the white one, you might get another shoot from the remaining 2 to kick out a shoot to eventually kind of even it out. But you will get some suckering from that. That'll last for a few years. Then I think it'll diminish some, but that's what I would do. I wouldn't try digging it out and separating it, because I think there's too much risk of injuring your 2 nice shoots. I would cut it to the ground, pinch off any suckers as soon as they come out. And eventually, I think you can reshape the plant, and it'll look pretty decent for you. So.
Great. The next question is that she has a limelight hydrangea that flops over every year after it blooms. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to get them not to flop? And if not, what's the best way to support them so they don't fall on or over the shade plants below them? This happens to me too. Yeah. In the spring, I prune to about 2 feet tall, remove all the main branches. I don't fertilize. And during the early summer, I prune out any new shoots that are weak, spindly, or grow downwards.
Yeah, I'm actually looking in my yard. I have sort of similar situation. I've got a limelight, and limelight's a very vigorous plant. So and I think what a lot of people are trying to do is trying to keep it to a smaller size. It doesn't want to be a smaller plant. So you could, And there's some newer cultivars called Little Lime, or like Little Limelight. There's a Little Limelight, a dwarf one. There's one called Bobo. There's some other dwarf ones. Those are probably the plant materials you probably would have been better to kind of keep it small. But what you could do, I think, to manage your limelight is you cut it down to 2 feet, maybe a little lower. And as it gets up, you would probably want to head it back a second time after it grows out, because it does flower in new growth. So you're going to be pruning it twice. You'll prune it once, let it go to maybe 2 feet, cut that back to 1 foot. You're going to end up with smaller flowers, but more of them. The stature of the plant should be shorter, and you should get less of that flopping. That's something you're probably going to have to do every year. And there's some other things you can do. Some tricks you can do. You could try to prune it to a standard or something like that. But in this situation, I think we're so far into it. I think that's what we're going to have to do. But the nice thing is there's so many new cultivars of hydrangeas, of the big leaf hydrangea. This is the panicled hydrangea. There's lots of dwarf ones. So I think it's called Little Lime, or Little Limelight is the one maybe to get. And there's something even really smaller than that.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. I think I'll try to see if Dave is speaking.
Let's see if Dave's around.
Can't get him.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you pretty good.
We can.
Okay. I'm under the tree now, so things are much cooler. But I'm sorry for the technical issues, but this is the first time we've ever done this. So you have to expect that you're going to have some fun issues on occasion. If you want me to finish, I can just give everybody, you can see here, this is a pretty nice long view of the garden. Everything you see in front of us is our vegetable garden. And they've done a wonderful job this year of basically trying to make do given the pandemic. When we came back in here last year, everything was just full of weeds. And you can see now how beautiful it is. But a lot of this space now is we either have wood chips here, or we're using peas and oats as a cover crop, and to cover things up. And then they just decided to plant squash, and it's produced superlatively. And people ask, should I? How do you prepare the soil? What do you do? We don't do a whole lot beyond using leaf mulch, and we just and then we just hold the plant, either the plant or a seed. We do not use anything else. We don't dig the soil up greatly. When we had the weeds and stuff, we had to do that. But when we're planting plants, there's really not a whole lot you can do or you need to do. And the leaf mulch is great, and it will it provides pretty much all of the nutrients that you might need. We do compost things here, and we use the compost as well. But I wanted to show you, Melissa and Steve. So I asked them to leave a couple of things for us.
Can you talk a little bit about the therapeutic horticulture garden? I just love it there.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. They had a real challenge this year to try to get it back into shape. Bob Loesch and his crew, and they have done just a beautiful job with it. And I guess, Melissa, you know better than me, but I understand that the ladies who go to the nursing homes aren't necessarily they weren't able to go into the nursing homes, but they were creating wonderful baskets that they could deliver to those nursing homes that they were working in.
Yes, that is what we had to do, but and now we can't go out again and be with them. But we drop off projects for them, leave them outside. The people that run the homes come outside, take them in, and give them to the residents, or we have a sheet of paper that tells them what to do so they can actually do the program. The thing I like about it most is all the flowers that we grow in that garden for these projects, and they're stunning.
They are stunning, and in fact they actually moved. Talking earlier about the the kitchen garden, that was part of what they had earlier. And then they've all moved over into an area back over in here. You can see all the yellow flowers, hopefully in the background. That's all part of the therapeutic horticulture. And then there's an area over here that we've got covered because that was where we had hops for many years. We took that all out, and they hopefully next season, they will be able to take that, and they will be able to expand that area as well.
We do have your picture now.
Okay, so that's.
And while you're going over there, maybe you can talk about the experiments we did with broccoli. Were you around at that time?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that we did was we you can see the fence has been taken out much further than when Steve first helped start this garden. And one of the things we tried a few years ago, in fact, it was the year that I was an intern in 2018, I guess. We tried to grow. We tried an experiment and to grow. It wasn't cauliflower. It was
broccoli.
Thank you, broccoli. And it was an interesting experiment. I wasn't involved in it particularly, but some of the I'll show you here. Some of the broccoli was grown under row covers, like what you see here, and some was out in the open. But for some reason, the bugs got to them, whether they were protected or not, and so it wasn't a particularly good result for that. But they learned that it's really difficult to grow broccoli here. So we haven't really grown it.
Well, I thought we were experimenting with heat-resistant varieties.
Yeah,
that was correct. Yeah,
they tried a lot of different ones, but I think that they were just they had so many issues with bugs that the result wasn't particularly good. But maybe it bears looking at again. I don't know.
So, did you want to show us something that you had set aside?
Well, I was actually what I was going to show you here was a lot of people don't know much about the pawpaws, but the pawpaw is a native plant here in Maryland. If you go all along the river, you will find these. We grow pawpaws here, and I'll show you here. This is what it looks like inside. And the raccoons and other animals just love it. What's weird about it is that the pawpaws are really only good for a couple of days, and they grow. I don't know if you can see them down there. You can see how they're big, round. The camera there. But inside, and this is what it looks like. And you see big seeds there.
I can't
if you
really
taste it,
the picture's frozen. So on the last slide. So anyway, keep talking though, because it's so interesting.
All right, I'll keep trying. All right, so the fruit itself is only good for a few days, and it tastes kind of like a custard. I think of it as an acquired taste, but a lot of people like it. And there's actually we actually had a presenter a few years ago, Master Gardener monthly meeting, and he has the whole plantation. He has the whole farm of pawpaws, and has a pawpaw festival and everything else. But this is one of the more interesting things.
Have you been?
And so,
have you been?
Haven't been to that. No.
I go every year. I go every year, and they do pawpaw tasting. So you can taste pawpaws from all over the region because they really just grow here. It's a tropical fruit, very tropical tasting, but
right.
Amazing.
But so anyway, I'll just wrap it up. Like I said, it's part of the farm park, and it's on Tuesdays. Tuesday mornings. It is open to the public anytime. And whenever we have events like Grow It, Eat It, and some of the other events up here, we will even staff up to provide tours or just answer most of the questions for folks. But just today, we had a couple of families with young children come in, and that's what we see a lot of, because they're looking to see what kind of flowers are these, what kind of square is that, what is where's the frog, where are the frogs in the ponds, that kind of thing. So so I'm going to turn this around now so you can see me there.
We can't see you. We can't see you.
You can't see anything.
No, we just see
the wonderness. Okay. Well, that's how wonderful Zoom is, I guess. But anyway, that's our Derwood demo garden. And like I said, people are more than residents. We welcome everybody to come up here and take a look. So I'll give it back to you, Melissa.
Well, thanks. You just, the garden is amazing. And if you haven't been there, you should visit it. It's open. I think it's from sunrise to sunset, and it's a great place to go. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to our questions. The next one, I have a number of azaleas, about 5, in my side front yard that have been there since we moved in about 10 years ago. I don't know how long previously they've been there. All have been pruned every few years. I put coffee grounds around them every year to aid the soil acidity, and generally they've done very well until this year. They have English ivy and pachysandra on the ground around them, which has been there for as long. I have one azalea close to the street and under a big tulip poplar. This azalea has started to turn yellow in some areas, not all of the plant. Some of those yellow leaves have holes, brown spots, and red areas. The other azaleas are about 5 to 6 feet away from this azalea plant, and they don't show any signs of this issue. Could it be a site issue, an injured branch, nutrient issue, or some pest or fungus? Steve?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's if you look at the picture, it's kind of interesting. The plant's been there for a number of years, and so it's done pretty well. So it's probably not a lack of nutrients in the soil. Although, just to be sure, it's probably not a bad idea to get your soil tested to still may find something interesting there. It's probably the roots were injured or compromised. So whether it was this year or the previous year, we've gotten a lot of rain, and maybe some of the root system or part of the root system is compromised. And so that part of the root system is not able to pick up the micronutrients for the plant, even though they're available. So that's why you'll see isolated branches here and there. Usually when they're pretty far gone, in some of the pictures, in some areas of the pictures you see, it's pretty far. I would probably just cut those out and try to regroup with the rest of the plant. You adding a fertilizer that has more of the micronutrients in there, iron and magnesium, that would help. That would negate it, make it easier for the roots to get what it can. So maybe a combination of a treatment of micronutrients or using a fertilizer that tends to be more acidifying. Often, like Miras and a lot of those products, they do come with micronutrients, but something probably compromised the plant, because it's interesting. You see part of the plant's doing fine, other parts isn't. It's been there for a number of years. This might have to do with all this rain that we've gotten like this year and previous years. So it's hard to say. And also will be probably very cultivar dependent too. So you might see one group of plants be affected and other group of plants not affected. So.
Great.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. So okra, this is the first year I've planted okra. This is from Melody in Montgomery County. We're now getting okra flowers, and very quickly after that, okra to eat. Very exciting. But why are some of the lower leaves turning brown and falling off? Is that normal? Do the plants need more water? What advice can you give me for growing okra? So okra is a warm season vegetable crop. It's an upright plant with a large flower. They're actually really beautiful. The small brown maroon circular spots may be caused by cercospora, leaf spot, a fungal disease affecting leaves and other plant parts. The disease spreads through the water. This condition may be caused by increased humidity, significant rain, which we have had over 7 inches over the summer, or overwatering. Leaves turning yellowish brown may be the result of insect damage, and okra is susceptible to whiteflies, aphids, ants, and mites. Really important to provide good soil drainage and even moisture to okra plants, even moisture. Remove all the diseased leaves and plant parts. Don't compost infected leaves or plant parts. Water in the morning at the base of the plant so leaves have a chance to dry, and thin out the foliage for better airflow. The insect tops and bottoms of leaves for insects, check them, and remove the insects by hand. You can use latex gloves if you want, or a damp cloth. Once the insects are removed, you may be able to lessen the insect damage with a row cover over the plant, making sure sunlight and water can still get to the plant. And clean and disinfect all your pruners and tools with alcohol. And then we have another question about basil. And this also looked to me, it could be two things, but it looked to me like Cercospora leaf spot, and it's the fungal disease what I just talked about. And you would do the same thing for the basil that I talked about with the okra. But the best thing to do is provide good soil drainage and even moisture to basil plants. Remove all the diseased leaves, and put a mound of no more than 2 inches of fresh mulch, or mulch that you can find in your garden that have provided a good covering for the soil, but never mix it with the soil. And water it in the morning at the base of the plant so the leaves and soil have a chance to dry. And clean and disinfect again all pruners and tools with alcohol. So that's my favorite plant in my garden, and I've had some of the same issues. Okay, Steve, this is for you. What should I do with shrubs that grow 1 to 5 feet, really long stems out of the middle? They are usually thicker than the rest of the stems and make the plant look imbalanced. Are they the beginning of the next growth spurt? And should I leave them, or are they suckers? Should they prune back? It especially happens with Abelia and Viburnum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the client, answered that partially right there. They're suckers. These are really, you can see in the picture, very vigorous upright growth, and you want to remove those as low as you can. If you can go all the way down to the ground, great. Sometimes you may not get to the ground. You might get to a point of attachment, but I'll remove those out as you see them. Otherwise, it's going to affect the overall shape and impact of your plant. Some plants or some varieties or some cultivars may do that more than others. But it's a real simple fix. Just prune those vigorous shoots out. It happens very often on some of the dwarf plants. They kind of do almost like a partial reversion. They want to go back almost to more like the species would grow. So little quick, a few pruning cuts here and there, and you should be done.
Great. Well, since Dave is not here, how about taking this next question? It's a quick one. The baby chart has started showing little brown spots. I've been removing the leaves with the spots. What are they? What else can I do to keep it healthy for the fall?
Well, if I remember those pictures actually look on the chart, look like they might have been insect injury. Could have been insect feeding. So sometimes insect feeding will get mistaken for plant disease, and I'm not positive. I'm looking at it right there. So and I'm also looking at the mound that's on there. That's not too bad. The color's a little off, a little bit. Maybe it should be a little darker green, perhaps. But sometimes the other thing is, I think Melissa may have been mentioned, we talked about some leaf spots. Sometimes leaf spots are caused by fungi, and sometimes they're caused by bacteria. So without knowing, the source of this, whether it's a fungal or bacterial, it might be insects. Sometimes we get fooled. Some of the plant bugs do injury that looks similar to this. If we're able to look at it under a scope or a good hand lens, we can make a little closer look and probably make a determination of that. But all in all, I don't think it looks too bad. I don't know if I would treat it. I would just go with what you got. And so I'm not sure if it warrants any action, particularly this time of the year. We're into September. So I would probably just let it ride. The temperature conditions are going to change. Here it's going to get a little cooler. And so hopefully if it is a fungal bacterial disease, it should slow down in progression.
Okay, great. Maybe you'll help me with this one. I'll try it, and then you tell me if I'm wrong.
Sure, awesome.
I have a vigorous shoot of a black gum tree coming out of a woody root of a nearby mature tree. Mm-hmm. I like to transplant it in the spring. However, I don't see how to dig it up unless I cut off the end of the root it is growing out of. The root is pretty big. I can't get a shovel through it when trying to dig up the shoot. Is there a way to encourage new root growth that will make it easier to transplant? So, I have one of these trees. I've not ever had this problem, but you may not be successful in transplanting this shoot. There may be ways to encourage root growth, but that doesn't necessarily make it easier to transplant a black gum tree. Black gums have a deep root system, including one or more long tap roots that reach deep into the ground. The root system makes it difficult to remove the shoot for transplanting without harming the shoot.
So what you said, Melissa, black gums have that reputation being difficult to transplant. Relatively, when they're small, they have a deeper taproot. But what you could do to help increase your chances of survivability is, you may want to do it now if you're looking to do it in the fall and the spring. It's got maybe about 12 to 18 inches, and just take a spade and just go down, and that will separate some of the roots. And that will hopefully encourage more roots to form within inside the root ball you're going to form. It's not going to get to that taproot if that taproot does exist. In a nursery situation, what they would have done at the time they planted the tree, or when it's in the nursery, they would have cut that taproot. And they have a couple of different ways they could do it. They would have pruned it at the time they planted it, or if it's in the nursery, they have a machine that has a bar that goes deep underneath it to cut it. So that's going to be a little more challenging, but I think it's worth the risk. I think, go around there, cut the roots, and just see how it works for you. And also the other thing they do by keeping the roots in that tighter area, you hopefully have a better root ball as the roots go in there. So, probably when you do it in the fall, it's not going to get the root ball to get, that much tighter in just a few weeks or a month or two. Maybe in the spring, but you can do it the following year, but then the tree's getting a little bigger, the root ball's getting a little heavier, it becomes a little more problematic. You can still do it. Then it's becoming really more of an effort of digging this up, and it becomes more of a procedure. Generally, a tree this size, I think you can move it, but black gums are beautiful trees. I look at it this way: if the alternative is it can't go there, then give it a try. See how it works for you. Maybe it will.
Good, thanks. And our last question for today is about standing water in a landscape bed. It's at the bottom of a hill in my yard, and during heavy rains, water will collect there and stay for days. The third photo is looking down the hill where the water drains from. So I don't know which photo you all are looking at, but Steve, what do you think? We've tackled this before in a previous in the garden program.
Yeah, there's a couple approaches you could do on this. You could try to get the water to convey elsewhere, but you have to worry about if it conveys elsewhere, if that's off your property, if that's going to be an issue with your neighbors or something like that. Maybe it's being bottled up. You've actually kind of dammed it up, trying to, it normally would have conveyed off, but maybe something like that. Probably, one real good, we were talking about this real good point is that if you have a situation like this, probably it's maybe not the first thing to think of is we have certain plants that we like, and we want to put those in the landscape. And that's great, but they may not do well in an area that gets, very poor drainage or gets saturated. So probably got to think sort of like a really good horticulturist would think is that what plant materials would, tolerate or grow well in this site. So that's going to limit your options down quite a bit to make your decision making a little easier. And you would go with those plants. So you might have a situation that happens lots of times in rain gardens where it gets really wet at periods of time, but then it also, not so much this year, some years, it really dries out. So there are some plants that really have good toleration to really wet and dry areas. And usually those are plant materials that are recommended to do in rain gardens. So the Montgomery County Department of Environment Protection has a great website. Check out about rain gardens. They list plant materials, and they group them accordingly, whether they're perennials or shrubs or what have you, that would maybe do really well in a situation like this. So I think it's an easier way to go. Trying to amend the soil and put drainage lines, if it's a quick fix, yeah, but it can get really involved and expensive. And maybe the way to go is to find plant materials that work with that site.
Great.
And many of those plant materials, particularly the Montgomery County Department of Environment Protection website, they're going to be native or nearby natives. And so that's good for the environment too.
We planted a lot of sweet gums on our property because they drink a lot of water. Yeah. And that seemed to help a big problem that we had here. So
yeah, and sweet gums are native, and they do well on wet sites, and they do well on dry sites. So those years when it kind of really dries out, they'll still hang in there.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you all for putting up with our technical issues. We're looking forward to our next program. If you want to submit a program, go to our link, which should be on your screen. Please enter as much detail as possible, and remember those photos are really important for us to make a decision and diagnose things. Cutoff for inclusion in the next session of In the Garden is Wednesday, September 15th at 6 p.m. to be answered on Tuesday, August 17th. I'm sorry, the date is wrong on my script. What date is our next program?
Our next program is going to be on the 21st.
Okay, so it's on the 21st of September.
Mm-hmm.
Please include your email in case we need to follow up. We'll make every effort to answer your questions on the air, but if we run out of time, we'll provide you an answer by email. Thank you, Steve and Dave.
Thank you.
Great. Sure.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Beth.
Powdery mildew on her bee balm, and she's wondering what should she do now. Should she cut it back, or what do you think?
Well, okay. So powdery mildew is it's a fungus, and this fungus has a little bit of a peculiarity in that what really favors its development is high humidity, not so much a wet surface. So, to try to make it not as problematic, if you can put it in areas where there's a better air circulation, that can help. There are, I'll jump ahead, but I'll circle back. There are pesticides that can do it. They're traditional ones, but there are also some that are, I would say, softer types of pesticides. But I think what you're alluding to, Beth, is that where are we now? We're in the beginning of September. What should we do? Probably, it is probably maybe banged up, beat up a little. Probably not really worth it so much this year, but next year, if it starts to progress, maybe make sure you don't do overhead watering. Try and increase the amount of airflow, light, air circulation. And the other thing in the future, there are cultivars of bee balm that have much greater powdery mildew resistance. So if you're looking to swap things out, or this one, you may have 2 or 3, and this one is just, always giving you troubles. I hate to say it, sounds very plant snobby. You take that plant out, and you replace it. Maybe that one's just not well suited here. Maybe farther north, where it's a little cooler, summer's not as long, humid, makes more sense there. But here, maybe that's not the one to get. So it's kind of some cultivar resistant. Checking for cultivars too. And also, may want to get ones a little shorter, because another thing they kind of do is they get kind of tall, and they get so tall and dense, they get really leggy at the bottom. So a little shorter, stockier one, powdery mildew resistance. You can probably find things like that online. If not, you can email us and we can help you out with that.
Okay, the other question we have is they would like to replace their ground cover. They have invasive creeping Charlie in a medium shaded backyard, and she wants to replace it with some native, preferably a native, walkable, just a few inches high, native ground cover. So what would you do? What would you suggest?
Melissa might have to help me out while I'm stalling on this one.
Yeah.
I have an answer, but go ahead, Melissa.
No, I am too. I have the small variety of vinca, but I don't walk on it. And it's a great ground cover, and it's grown thick, and I get those purple flowers, and I love it. But I don't think it's for walking on.
So that's a really good question. So once you want something that's shade tolerant, you probably want something that's evergreen, and you need something. So, and then they didn't add deer resistant. If that was in there, then it really gets really good. Not a lot of options. You're not acceptable to a lot of people, but I think the greater thing is what we want to do is we want to make sure we don't have bare soil there. So a ground cover or wood, wood chips or something there is something. We just don't want bare soil, because you get bare soil, you get erosion, and the soil gets into the creeks and streams, and that causes a lot of problems, more problems than people realize. Because once the soil gets into the water, the nutrients that are attached to the soil particle, the chemistry is different and releases phosphorus, and that's our number one pollutant to the bay. So we want to try to do good management. So before blasting any things out, you want to you want to think of something. What are you going to replace it with? So there are some things. Christmas ferns are great, native. Have to compromise a little is where I'm going there. With something that may not be native. There's some native characters. There are many characters that are not native. Now, I think it's pretty good is some of the Dwarfmondo grasses. Now, they're not native, but you can walk on them a little, and they look like a lawn, and they handle the shade, and they handle it dry, and they're cut low enough that usually the deer are on them. So it's a little compromise there. Maybe some areas you give over to the natives, and maybe you don't have everything for every spot, but you're working it. You're working it anyway.
What about a juga?
A juga. Now, that's so there's juga, and so bugleweed. Now that creeps a little fast for some people, likes the sun, but there's different ones. There's a whole bunch of different cultivars of a juga. Some are not nearly as aggressive. So there's ones like chocolate chip and black scallop. And and so some of the jugas will do a little bit more in the sun, in the shade, but there's some that are not nearly as aggressive. So chocolate chip and black scallop would be much easier to contain, tighter area, not going to romp all over the area more like the straight species or the like bronze beauty, which is the main one. So I think so. I'm happy with that. And even Caitlin's Giant, which is a bigger leaf and that likes shade and a little bit of bronze to it, a little coarser look to it. And I think that you can manage it. Most people can manage it.
I love the flowers.
Yeah, and the flowers are attractive.
And they're a great pollinator.
And I'm sure they will attract some pollinators. Yes.
Lots of bees. Yeah.
Yes. So it's trying to find all those things. It's sometimes a little challenging. Once you put all those pieces together, it shrinks down, and they go, "What do you got?" So that's a tough one at times.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Steve and Dave. I hope you were hearing this. Thank you so much for being our experts today, and our researchers for this week were Mary Lou, Sheila, Deborah, and Ray. And thank you all for joining us. Our next garden program will be September the 21st at noon. Our speaker is going to be Kathy Jentz, Washington Gardens. And our last in the garden will be October the 5th. Our speaker will be Jeanette Proudfoot. She's Montgomery County's Parks Brookside Children's Garden. And that's going to be wonderful. If you have questions you'd like answered, please contact us at the link on the screen by September 15th at 6 p.m. And we'll see you again soon.